Will happen. All right. It is 4:30. Call the meeting to order and acknowledge that the District of Tofino operates within the territory of the Tla-o-qui-aht First Nation. Tla-o-qui-aht. Notice to attendees that the meeting is being video recorded and will be published to the District of Tofino's YouTube channel. Notice to virtual attendees to sign up for the public comment and question period using the Q&A function in Zoom. To register, participants are required to enter their full name, residential address, and the agenda item they wish to speak to. Through unanimous consent, if there are no objections, I move that pursuant to section 15 of the District of Tofino meeting procedure bylaw number 1229/2016 is amended. The October 21, 2025 regular meeting be held electronically via Zoom and live broadcasted on the District of Tofino's YouTube channel, and that the facility provided for the public to watch and hear the meeting be located at Tla-o-qui-aht Sound Community Theatre, 380 Campbell Street, Tofino, BC. No objection, the motion is carried. Also, through unanimous consent, I move that the regular council agenda be adopted. Seeing no objection, that motion is carried. The adoption of the minutes. Through unanimous consent, if there are no objections, I'll move that the minutes of the regular council meeting held October 7th, 2025 be adopted. Seeing no objection, that motion is carried. Mayor's reports. It's wonderful to see the SD70 field project completed and flattened, and the grass is growing, and that is a tremendously successful project on many fronts. Not only for the collaboration with the community on making sure that the new daycare didn't impact and would lose recreation facilities. In fact, we have a larger, better, and all around greater recreation facilities, and that's just a wonderful example of how our new relationship with SD70 is bearing fruit. And I just want to say that transformational relationship is not only exhibited in the fields and the recreation facilities, but also in the recreation programming that we're now able to deliver to the community. And I do want to commend both our staff and the SD70 staff for coming together and supporting the community in such a great way. And the kids and the families are winners. And also noting that the field looks great. I also want to note that it was funded in large part by our paid parking program, as well as tourism dollars. But the paid parking program is also an example of how our staff, this council, and the community has been able to think outside the box, to develop a unique solution to our parking problem, and at the same time raise revenue for great projects, recreation projects in the community, and other infrastructure projects. And so I do want to commend staff, commend this council, and commend the community as a whole for embracing that. It's been a tremendous success on many fronts. There's still work to do on offshore parking, but that is moving ahead with lots of hard work, collaboration with the surrounding communities as well. So I look for more success. One more shout out to staff and to this council, and that has to do with water. You know, with the new, we were getting weekly updates at the height of summer on our water use. The monitoring system is up to date. It's becoming state of the art. Staff have been working for many, many years, and especially lately, on making sure the water system is more and more efficient, that the water we're using is going where it needs to, that leaks are detected and repaired. It hasn't been an easy road, but I do note this summer, with the new population data and with the average daily water use in Tofino, when you put those two together, it appears to me that we have a remarkably low per capita water use in Tofino, so low that I think it can be held as an example for the rest of the province. And I really look forward to seeing those numbers come back and seeing how a review of that system comes back to council, so that all the community can see how efficient our water system has become. And I think it's a model that other communities will look to. So thanks to staff, thanks to this council, and thanks to the community. That's it from my mayor's report. Public comment on agenda items, Ms. Larson.
Thank you, Mayor Law. We don't currently have any attendees signed up remotely using Zoom, and we didn't have anyone sign up on the public comment sheet. So I might just open up the floor to an open call for public comment. If anyone in the public gallery would like to sign up for a 2-minute slot to make a comment on any agenda items. As you're all here in attendance, you could just raise your hand or come up to the podium if you'd like to speak. So calling once, calling twice, calling 3 times.
Super. Moving on to correspondence. Item 9.1. Now this is a correspondence from Samantha Hackett, Executive Director, Tofino Chamber of Commerce, regarding continuation of fee for service agreement. And let's see any hands jumping up. I do have a suggestion for council that we move comments and discussion on this letter to a future meeting after we meet with the chamber board for discussion. Comments from council? Okay, moving on. 9.2, correspondence from Honorable Christy Boyle, Minister of Housing and Municipal Affairs, regarding small scale multi-unit. I briefly discussed this with Josh up there, so I'm going to call on staff just for a little background to this, just so clarity on how this letter that appears to be focused and sent to us, how it actually affects us as a.
Sure, thank you. You, the chair. This legislation, the majority of which in it speaks to communities with more than 5,000 residents and within urban containment boundaries. So it doesn't apply to us, I should say, more directly. Because we have a population of under 5,000, much of what the legislation around multi-unit, small-scale housing doesn't necessarily apply to us. That said, we have been working within our zoning bylaw to accommodate, say, accessory dwelling units everywhere throughout the district, things like that in the past. So if someone's wondering, oh, can we now develop 3 or 4 unit housing in single family districts? No, that's really only mandatory for municipalities over 5,000. So even though the letter feels like it might be directed towards us, it's not.
Super, thanks for that clarification. Comments from council? Okay, moving on. We have invited presentation from Brad Purcell, Executive Director of Tofino. We also have Mr. Welsh co-presenting, and due to that, I did receive a request from staff early that this presentation may go over 15 minutes. So I am going to humbly ask council if they would consider extending this presentation to 20 minutes at the start, so we don't have to stop it and start again after it. So nodding. Okay, so I'll move from the chair that the item 10.1, invited presentation for Brad Purcell, will be granted 20 minutes. Mr. Steer, comments from council? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion carried.
Jamie, are you our clicker now?
Yes.
Sure. I'll just give a brief intro before we move on. So I've seen a lot of plans throughout my career. I've helped produce dozens, read hundreds of them, but I've never really come across one that's 12 pages long. There's beauty in the simplicity and depth that's contained within this draft Destination Stewardship Plan. Its creators at Destination Think really labored over every word, and that's clear. The result really is a vision that transcends where so many contemporary planning efforts get hung up on key messages lost in extensive documentation, policy justifications, copious data, detailed rationales. This plan has all of that running in the background. You can read it in appendices, but long plans where these key elements are really lost in that content simply aren't as effective as this one. So I should also say that plans like this aren't possible everywhere. Here in Tofino, it is possible, and that's largely because we have such a strong relationship with the Tla-o-qui-aht First Nation as friends and partners. So Brad Purcell and I are here to present the Destination Stewardship Plan for this draft. We're not here today looking for a motion. That will come later. We're here to simply present its contents. Next slide. So the primary role of this plan, which is funded entirely through our municipal and regional district tax, really is to replace the 2014 tourism master plan and distill a community vision for our dominant industry. This plan is a District of Tofino plan, and it's intended to guide future strategies, policies, and projects as they relate to tourism. But perhaps most importantly, it's meant to be a simple, decolonialized, plain language document that really anyone could pick up, read, and be inspired by. Next slide. So this plan is about thinking big so that we might adequately be guided and inspired for future generations. You'll not find a to-do list necessarily contained within it, but rather a shared vision that can be updated in alignment with our OCP in the future. This plan is intended to complement planning and budgeting processes as it relates to tourism. Next slide. So for a bit more background for how we've arrived to today, I'll share 4 more slides before Brad presents the plan. So as I mentioned, the DOT and Tourism Tofino agreed to develop this plan using MRDT funds. In June 26 and 2024, this project was introduced to you all. Summer of 2024, an RFP was put out to the public, and in September, Destination Think was awarded that job. So in fall of 24, engagement began. Completed a bunch of background research on best practices on a global scale prior to engagement. Next slide. So on March 28th, project update was given to you all here at council. And then winter of 2024 and 25, so last winter, we went out for the first round of formal engagement. Residential survey had about 452 responses. So if you extrapolate that out, that's almost half of our households. Business survey went out to 130, or had about 132 responses. There were approximately 30 one-on-one interviews. Some were broadcasted on the radio. This effort also summarized community engagement from other local and regional. We also can synthesize what we heard. So next slide. In spring of 25, there was a second round of formal engagement, which was quite thorough, as you can see here. There were facilitated workshops. There were presentations to council. It was an open house with the District of Tofino, open house with Tla-o-qui-aht First Nation, Tla-o-qui-aht. Draft plan was produced incorporating this engagement. Presentations were given to Tourism Tofino's board and the Tofino Chamber of Commerce. And in June 25, a draft plan was available on Talk Tofino for public comment. So also, I should mention, next slide, that there was an extensive list of organizations consulted to produce this draft. And this is a list, not in entirety of all those who were engaged with, but it's pretty thorough if you take a look. So with that, I'll ask Brad Purcell, the Executive Director of Tourism Tofino, to present the actual plan. Thanks, Brad.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeff. Have you got the clicker? Oh, no, you're the clicker. Okay, cool. I'm extremely excited to be here after 18 months of formal work and 3 years of informal work on this project. I think Josh did a great job setting up the engagement, but just if you're wondering which plans, we reviewed all of those plans. There are 2 individuals at Destination Think that might be the only people on earth that have actually read every single one of those to cover and summarize them, but we can jump to the next slide. We kind of talked about this already. There was a lot of informal engagement and then some very, very, very formal engagement. I think Josh did a great job of covering that off, so we can jump ahead. And really, when you boil it all down, of everything we heard, read, and were exposed to through all of the engagement and the discovery, you could really boil it down to a couple of key points, which are these on the screen. Tofino exists because of the natural environment, and that's the community of Tofino as well as Tofino as a destination. We just wouldn't be here without that environment. The environment is protected because of largely First Nations values, the support of allies. There is broad alignment across all sectors of the community that a healthy environment is crucial for Tofino and by extension tourism to thrive. There was very, very clear indication that we are very community minded in Tofino, which is no surprise to the people in this room. There are lots of amazing organizations and people doing lots of great work already. There are already examples where tourism is supporting community needs, like what the mayor talked about at the top of the meeting. And I think the second to last one's really salient. There is broad, almost universal acceptance that we can't grow visitor volume indefinitely. That at some point, and we can argue about what that point is, but we just can't have more and more and more people come, particularly from. And the other really big insight here that we took very seriously into consideration was the 40th anniversary of the Tribal Parks Declaration, which happened on the Village Green last June, where the hereditary chiefs asked, the community to respect Tla-o-qui-aht laws and protocols. Next. And when you think about the priorities of the community, what we heard, what everybody wants when they think about tourism 50 years from now, this is the priorities of this community, all boiled down to 8 things. There is an abundance of people who want to care for the land and waters of Tofino. We recognize we need to build resilience to climate challenges, which we've already experienced a little bit of. We need to strengthen our community connections. We need to create a future for our youth here in Tofino. We need to walk the path, not talk, but walk the path of truth and reconciliation and revitalizing Indigenous culture. We need to balance tourism growth with the community's needs and the limits that are here. We need to support a strong local workforce. Most folks who live here are employed by tourism. And we need to find ways to make it possible for folks to live here. And those were the 8 things we heard over and over and over again through this project, which really colored the draft of the plan. And the expectation, just to reiterate, that the hereditary chiefs of Tla-o-qui-aht First Nation, citing British Columbia's Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People Act, have asked everyone residing in or visiting Tofino to adhere to laws and protocols, and for all residents and visitors to take the ESOC pledge. And we took that very, very seriously through this project. And there was a lot of internal engagement with the First Nation to arrive at that pledge. So that is the ESOC pledge. I'm not going to go through it all, but I'm sure you've heard of it all before. And if we jump to the next slide, and just hit one more, I think, to populate the top. There you go. I'm sure everybody's familiar with ESOC, the term. It is Nuu-chah-nulth, and particularly Tla-o-qui-aht First Nation, but all Nuu-chah-nulth nations' highest law, and it loosely translates to respect. And when we talked about what does a respectful tourism industry look like, we heard, we want an industry that respects everybody here, the history, the culture, the community. We want equitable prosperity. We want to protect the environment and broadly the planet. And I think the big light bulb moment for this project was realizing that the values we'd heard from the whole community through months and months of engagement and the values espoused in the ESOC pledge, when you overlay them, are actually the same. We concentrate a lot on what divides us sometimes in this community, but at the beating heart, we all have the same values, and that all ladders up to this concept of ESOC, or respect. So the name of the plan seems like a bit of a no-brainer at one point when we got to that light bulb moment, is that Tofino stands for respect. That is the name of the Tofino Destination Stewardship Plan. And we, to Josh's point, didn't use a whole bunch of jargon. We didn't talk about missions, values, KPIs, regenerative tourism, all of that stuff. We tried to keep the language really simple, but this is kind of the vision of the community that we heard. People want an abundant future, and a deep respect for all living things is the foundation that's going to enable Tofino and the tourism industry therein to flourish. And so if you think multi-generationally or 50 years from now, what if Tofino became a beacon for respect, where Indigenous rights and knowledge lead, guiding how we restore, govern, and thrive, that the salmon come back to local watersheds, and so do the stories of teachings and traditions tied to them, that our youth rise as stewards of culture and land, that are proud to shape a future here, and that visitors don't just come to witness the beauty, they come to actually learn about it and how to care for it. That tourism works in balance with our limits and strengthens our connections to each other, and that people live and work here with pride because this place supports everybody who calls it home. We could be this living example of Indigenous environmental leadership for the world to follow, and that could be the new brand. So what is tourism's responsibility? Tourism's responsibility in this plan is to foster that respect and connection so that guests leave Tofino better than when they arrived. And there's a double meaning in there. That means that guests leave Tofino better than when they arrived, giving back, whether that's time or money. And they leave Tofino themselves better than when they arrived and become these kind of champions for our values when they go home. So the big goal to sort of, if you think about sort of the first step or how we're going to mobilize this plan and get it out of the gate, we arrived at a goal where within the next 5 years, we want every visitor, resident, and business to take the ESAP pledge. And so we talked a lot about it's one thing to take a pledge. There's other examples of pledges around the world, but what can tourism actually do to foster that respect and connection and to actually live up to the values that the community has asked us to live up to and that the hereditary chiefs have asked us to live up to in the ESAP pledge? And there are basically 7 pillars, if you will, to how we think we can get tourism to this place. And I'll quickly take each of them in turn. So the first one is about sharing knowledge.
Council's amenable to hearing the whole thing, so just to interject.
Okay, cool.
If you go beyond 20, we can ask council for an extension, and I feel that council.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack, but I'll try to be as concise as I can. So those are the 7 things. We'll go through each one. If I could get a slide change real quick. Thank you. So the first one is loosely visitor education. I will say that all of these aren't brand new concepts to tourism in Tofino. In fact, a lot of this is stuff that we've already been working on in various ways, shapes, and forms. But to sort of coalesce it here into this plan is really important about sharing knowledge with guests about the people, the place, and how to behave when you're here. And, we all know that Tofino is more than a destination, it's our home. And it's filled with life. And, how do we teach visitors about, the biodiversity here, but also, how they can leave a light footprint, preserving water, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lots of this plan is, again, not a to-do list. It's not by 2027, the Chamber of Commerce is going to do X. It's not that kind of plan. All of the actual tactics will come to life in like a 5-year MRDT plan and the 3-year RDS and things like that. But these are some ideas of some of the initiatives that could sit under each of these 7 pillars. So obviously getting people to take the pledge, weaving together stories of this area and its people, including our history and our values as we invite people to visit, which really talks to tourism Tofino's marketing and how we talk more about our values and brands than just showing pretty pictures of beaches. Teaching guests how to visit responsibly, obviously, and providing learning opportunities throughout their whole experience. Every touch point that they're here, they get, an opportunity to learn and engage with our community. So that's visitor education pillar. It's fairly straightforward. The next one is about, you've probably heard a lot about regenerative tourism lately, and it's really simply about giving back. It's that the tourism industry here in Tofino has an opportunity and a responsibility to make Tofino a better place to live by contributing both money, but also time and knowledge. And so encouraging more volunteerism, finding opportunities to share knowledge, fund or collect donations of businesses for community programs like the Travel Park Allies program, making direct investments in the shared resources and infrastructure that we need, think wastewater treatment plant, contributing to environmental conservation and restoration, and promoting shopping local and staying local would be some examples of things we could do under the giving back bucket. The third bucket is really important. It's the visitor experience itself. Why are people coming to Tofino? And if we're going to unlock seasonality, which spoiler alert is another one, we need to really, really keep our eye on the visitor experience, not just in August, but in January as well. Our greatest opportunity for an abundant future happens when visitors have these really remarkable experiences that are true to who we are and to our values and cultures. We all know that Tofino is not Cancun. It's not Miami Beach. You know, that's not what this place is. So, you know, initiatives in here are like promoting, you know, the stories and the businesses that are upholding the ESOC pledge and our values. You know, sharing stories that illustrate again sort of the history and that help revitalize that language and culture, and enabling new tourism experiences to emerge that fit these kind of. The fourth one is low impact travel. And we had lots and lots of conversations about the Tofino context, but you know, with popularity comes responsibility, and we have to conserve resources and respect public infrastructure. And we all know the busiest month of the year is the month that we are most stressed for water, for example. And so, you know, how can we encourage more low impact travel to Tofino? The easiest way to do that is get to folks to stay longer. They've already burnt a whole bunch of carbon and got their way out here. Like, you know, let's get them to stay for a week and not a weekend. You know, focusing our marketing on nearby travel markets, using clean transportation to travel here. So, you know, preparing ourselves for when everybody who comes here has an electric vehicle, promoting active and public transportation within the area, teaching visitors about environmental preservation. We're well on our way with water conservation efforts. And I think there's a huge appetite amongst the business community to look at eliminating waste and helping our folks out with the ACRD landfill, and shifting to renewable and efficient energy. So lots of opportunities in terms of low impact. It wouldn't be a tourism plan about Tofino without talking about seasonality. We all know that since the pandemic, the dead of winter's actually got quiet over visitation, while summer continues to be, you know, when most people come. And we need to balance that impact and become more resilient by inviting people to return at less busy times of the year. And this is something we've done the whole time Tourism Tofino has existed, but we need to radically reimagine what that actually looks like and go beyond just sort of talking about storm watching. And, you know, things in here could be, you know, building a list of people who've taken the ESOC pledge and inviting them for exclusive events and things in the winter time, or, you know, working with not-for-profits to, you know, do some of that citizen science and volunteerism opportunities that are only available in the off season. And obviously focusing Tourism Tofino's whole efforts on trying to get people here at different times of the year.
Marcel, I think we're over the 20, so
okay,
just to get, I'd like to keep to the bylaws and policies, so I'm going to ask if council is amenable to the extension.
Yes, okay, well then I'll move through unanimous consent that we grant Mr. Purcell another 7 minutes.
Cool. It would have been awkward if
I think seeing no objection.
Amazing, thank you. Okay, we're almost there. So the second to last pillar of the 7 is our workforce. And you know, we all want a strong year-round workforce. We understand that seasonality, you know, has impacts to housing and other things. And, you know, one of the things I inherited when I got to Tourism Tofino was we were spending tens of thousands of dollars on marketing campaigns, attracting workers from Calgary and Toronto to come work here, when it was pretty obvious to me that there was a lot of people within the region that could be engaged in this industry that aren't, and for very serious and systemic reasons. And so trying to take a look at understanding and removing those systemic barriers, you know, particularly for First Nations folks in the region, there are a lot of barriers to participate in this industry. And so thinking about how we decolonize tourism businesses to create safer spaces for those folks to work, ensuring there's equitable access to transportation to get those folks to and from work, and, you know, supporting entrepreneurial opportunities for First Nations people that, you know, want to do their own thing, make a go of it, and what kind of supports can we put behind those folks? So really looking at workforce in quite a different way to how we have in the past. The 7th and final pillar of this plan is advocacy, and it's a recognition that the tourism industry by itself can't solve all of Tofino's problems. But if we band together and we all ask for the same thing, we can overcome some of the greatest challenges we face in terms of the future of this community. Tourism Tofino's superpower is marketing and communication and winning hearts and minds. And I think there's a huge amount of opportunity to work together to push for priorities, both at a provincial, national, and even international level. So understanding the basic elements that we need for tourism to thrive in Tofino and then representing those interests within all of our spheres of influence. Continue to involve Tofino's diverse communities in planning and decision-making is a big one, and leveraging our strong influence to advocate for things like housing, water supply, et cetera, et cetera. So those are the 7 ways we think the tourism industry can ladder up to the ESAC pledge and this big vision. If you hit it one more time, it'll probably show you the last one. There you go. The other thing we realized as we went through this is that historically our measurements of tourism in this community have been volume, and I've presented some of that information to you. It's been hotel occupancy, how much do people spend, how many people are here. It's all been about volume, and I think we need to continue to measure those things, but we also need to start thinking about more holistic indicators and how we measure success in tourism, and resident sentiment being king among all of them. We are now in an annual cycle where Tourism Tofino is surveying residents in the fall after the busy summer season to see what folks thought. I'll give a shameless plug that resident survey is out right now if you want to take that survey. But we're going to hear about a bunch of different issues that would be hard to measure otherwise. The residents are going to feel it. They're going to know it intrinsically, and we need to keep an eye on that. The visitor experience as well. And then we need to start thinking about how we're going to measure tourism's impact on the environment. Do we pick a keystone species like salmon? Do we look at GHG emissions? We need to do something in the environmental space and account for that impact. Obviously, business sentiment. And then equity, especially as we're on this path of truth and reconciliation, we need to be constantly checking in with the nations and Indigenous folks out here. How are we doing? How are you feeling about tourism? Is it getting better? Is it getting worse? So that is it. It's pretty much a final draft. Like Josh said, we are going to come back in a couple of weeks for more of a formal vote. We just wanted to close the circle and come back to you and present this. And yeah, I'm incredibly proud of where this has landed. There's been tons of work behind the scene. All 7 of you, I know Councillor Sloman's not here, but we're actively involved in this project. So I just wanted to thank the district for your support, and I'm happy to answer any questions. We also have Rodney, the consultant from Destination Think, on Zoom if we need him, but I think we've been doing all right so far.
Super, thanks for that presentation. It was worth the extension.
Riveting. Going to open it up to council for questions. Just here. Councillor Adams. Sorry.
Well, I just have a comment, so.
Yeah, I was going to say it's kind of a combination question comment.
Well, then you win, so you get to go first.
Well, then I'll start off by thanking you, of course, and it really is truly visionary, and the work that's done. You should be proud of the work that's done here. It really is remarkable, and I think you, as you say, we could be setting an example in the larger world context, and I think there's some real truth to that. And I think it's the change of narrative that we've heard. Those of us have been involved in the tourism industries and for a long time, and not so much anymore, of course, but is the stewardship on understanding, and then it's underscored the importance of stewardship and the sets of values tied in with the First Nation and the pledges that you brought forward. And so the questions were related to it, and you answered a bit of it in terms of the initiatives, and as you broadly forecasted, this is not by 2026 at 7 o'clock we'll have those done, but there are challenges to those initiatives there, and some of them are fairly straightforward. Promoting locally owned businesses, and then others more complex, such as the decarbonization and removing those systemic barriers for the participation of our nations here that could be potentially a strong workforce. And then in the end, there was the providing the metrics for success, and I think that's critically important. And as you pointed out, historically we beds and heads and beds, and how we measure that success, and so I was intrigued by that, and the question is more around how will we you laid out and I believe there was approximately 6 measurements there. And some of them, once again, will need a solid baseline piece of information. Like when you talk about the health of a system, you use a keystone like salmon. You're going to need some baseline data for a lot of those GHG emissions, those very solid things. And then, some of those are very quantitative, and the more subjective ones, that's the question I'm leading up to is there an action plan for how you're going to go about measuring the success? And I know you put right up front community sentiment and I know surveys and all that, but is there a plan in place or to be moving forward with, or is that a conversation still to be had?
No, 100%. And I think especially given my situation, we've turned our head a lot to implementation and how do we keep this going? And there is a bit of an implementation roadmap we've worked on with Destination Think, and the Tourism Tofino board is gathering for we start putting together a first shot at our 5-year plan for the next MRDT renewal, which will be largely informed by all of this. But to get back to your point specifically, throughout the stewardship plan, there's low-hanging fruit and deeply complicated systemic problems. Like we took it all on. And so same with the KPI is I think we can get a lot out of resident sentiment if we get a really good sample sizes like 500 like we got last year. We can actually segment that out, to First Nations folks and things like that. And that's going to do a lot of the lifting. The environmental indicators are probably the most complicated, and that's going to be us sitting down with experts that aren't us, like redfish restoration and others, to try to figure out like what that looks like. And there is technology coming down the track in the next year or two potentially to measure carbon in a lot cheaper kind of a way. So whether that's a waste audit of the industry and then tracking how much waste the industry produces, or whether it's more about emissions and having a carbon audit periodically, I think there's a lot to unpack there. I think each of the 7, to give you a bit of a hint behind the scenes of what it looks like to bring this to life, I'd imagine 7 working groups under those 7 pillars, with those working groups populated by the agriculture. So we're going to spool up an environmental one. There would be people way more qualified and smarter than me sitting at that table who could help us solve that problem. We want to measure tourism's impact environmentally. What are the easiest ways available to us today to do that, and what are the things we can do?
Sure.
All right, well, my comments a little bit briefer, but that's our speakers. I just want to thank you and Destination Think for the report and presentation, and just acknowledge that, in your time here with Tourism Tofino, you've done a really remarkable job of bridging conversations between Tofino residents, Tla-o-qui-aht businesses, organizations, and really taking a big picture view and then impacting everyone locally. It's been really great.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
I have one comment, and I always bring it up, but I'm gonna bring it up again.
Yeah.
So surveys, and it's the challenge of survivorship bias. I've seen it, been here for many, many years, decades, and I was actually thinking, I wonder if I know more people who've left than are here, than I know here, and some people are born here, grow up here, or they put their most productive years of their life here, and then they find that they're forced out. They're either priced out, or they're healthed out, or for whatever reason they are essentially forced to leave the community they love. And once they're gone, and so is their voice. And I always think that that's an important, it's an important voice to somehow acknowledge. And I don't know if you can find it, but if we could somehow both acknowledge and find a little piece of it, it would make our community so much better. And it would make our community more full.
Yeah, I've definitely heard you passionately talk about that in the past, and I think it's a really salient point. Is good. As somebody who is unfortunately gearing up to leave this community, like, could there be like an exit survey or something where on your way out the door you're like, well, I would have stayed if X, Y, Z. But yeah, I really, outside of that, I don't know how you reach those people would be the problem to solve. But again, I think there's lots of smart people in this community who could come together and figure that out when we're starting to KPIs and how to measure all this stuff.
We could just go with rumor.
With rumor. Yeah. But I think I mean, you're absolutely right. I think intrinsically we do have a relatively good understanding of why folks leave. Maybe not from now, but yeah, I think it's a fairly, you think about, I mean, just the sweep of people moving through the business community as staff in and out. Like I think employers start to get a sense of like, well, you know, it's X or it's Y or it's healthcare, or it's the thing you're proud of. But it's certainly a good point, worth investigating. How do we, yeah, the best I can do is an exit survey with people who leave. I can write the first one if you.
Excellent. Okay, looking at council, Councilor Anderson.
Yeah, just a question. This is presented as a draft.
Mhm.
And when it comes back for adoption,
Mhm.
I'm assuming this is a final draft.
It's pretty fun.
Different.
I mean, I'm absolutely ears open if you have any last minute tweaks out the door, but as you can see, we went through quite an odyssey to arrive at this this draft. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, you all know where to find me if you have burning things.
Has it already been presented to Tourism Tofino Board, Chamber? Or
Not for adoption, no.
Any other input other than?
Yeah, so it's probably a good point actually. So the process will be, we're gonna come back, as I understand it, November 4th for your adoption. In the meantime, and we wanted you to be first to see it. And then in between, we're gonna do the Tourism Tofino Board next week. We haven't really talked about the Chamber of Commerce Board, but we should probably do something like that. And then the Director of Lands and Resources and the Tribal Administrator of Tla-o-qui-aht First Nation are looking at what their endorsement of this plan looks like, which at this stage is probably going to be like a letter of support saying that they were engaged in this process and they fully support the outcome. So my goal is when I come back to you folks November 4th, those other approvals are in play and you kind of have the last kick at the can.
One final question, and we developed it together, districts, tourism.
Yeah.
But who owns the document? It certainly is going to be, a visionary document for both organizations, but where does it really live?
With both of us, I think.
What's that?
With both of us, like it's a municipal document first and foremost for the District of Tofino, but for Tourism Tofino, it will be, to give you a peek behind our board retreat next week, the first half day is going through this and then setting the stage for the next 5 years based on that. So I would think, I've said this multiple times, but I think it's helpful to think about the stewardship plan as a policy guidance document, not the actual policy, so that when council sits down to consider budgets, resort development strategies, anything that touches tourism, this is kind of policy guidance. It does what we're deciding.
Okay. Super. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. All right. Moving on to 10.2, about 117 grant application progress.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I will presenting on District Lot 117. I will attempt to make this as quick as possible. Today we're going to talk about District Lot 117, which is roughly outlined here in red. It encompasses a large part of the interior of the district. You can see our water tower, one of our water towers there, the trail that goes between the community hall and industrial way, that also covers up our effluent pipe. You can see the wastewater treatment plant at the bottom and the area that we currently use for impounding cars adjacent to the public works yard. So, this one. I will go fast. It's not that fast.
You're not getting an extension.
It's about a 68-acre parcel. It was conditionally granted to the district in 1956 for watershed purposes. And as we work through the zoning for the fire training facility, we identified that some of the uses on that property are not watershed purposes. We notified the province, and now I'm in front of you today to present how we might address that. Next slide. So current uses, we have the water reservoir that was installed in 85, Tonkin connector in 2013, the wastewater treatment plant, and that secondary emergency access, which is also the Tonkin connector. And then we're proposing a fire training facility on or adjacent to that lot in 26. So there's two main issues. One, that we have existing and proposed uses that are not watershed, so they're not in compliance. So the province is aware of this and has asked us to address it. And the second piece, and the option that'll be in front of council today, is to decide what to do with the remaining land. So if we decide to move forward with this process to remove the watershed use or remove the watershed use of some parts, how do we want to do that? How much money do you want to spend? What process would council like staff to take? Next slide. The sponsored crown grant, this is the option that staff are suggesting, requires a council resolution and has a budget of about $42,500. This would be encompassed in our 26 to 30 budget process that's currently ongoing. Right. So once we sort out the uses that are there that we can't really move, like the wastewater treatment plant, the water, the potential of the fire training ground and the trail, we can do nothing. We can apply for a sponsored crown grant to deal with each of those uses, or we can apply purchase on the land at market value. So the do nothing basically would just allow us to maintain that existing water tower, plus the wastewater treatment plant and the fire training ground, and then everything else would just remain as watershed or forest as it is today. We can apply for sponsored crown grant to do something else with that forest area, whether we want to put housing on there or another utility structure, but we would have to go through another process. Or we can apply to purchase some of all the land at market value, which obviously would be a significant cost to the District of Tofino. For this case, and because we don't actually have any plans for that, and to meet up with some of our 30-30 strategic plan goals, staff would be recommending option one at this time. If we decide to move forward tonight, we'll be speaking with the Tla-o-qui-aht First Nation. We'll develop a budget for the application, and that'll come back to council in the budget process, and then apply to the province for the grant. These are the recommendations in front of council today. I won't read them out.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Looking for questions for council. Council Steer.
Yeah, just a quick question through the chair. I was a little confused about this section that for the fire training center. Was that encompassed within the allowable uses?
We are going to add it. We're not quite sure exactly where this fire training ground is going to end up. So please go back to the first slide. Sorry. So I'm just going to walk up here to the pointer. But at the corner here, we can see where the training ground was originally meant to be. It's subject to the fire hall grant that we're also looking at. And so it's like we originally planned for here. It might end up here on the district property, and we wouldn't need to include it there, but we might need that whole space for both of those things. And so for now, until we get some further details about how that all might unfold, we want to make sure we include it. But it would only be for this area here, not for
There council questions, council comments. I'm quite in favor of your recommendation, option one. It's the bill, and happy to see all of these recommendations go forward unless council has a different opinion. Okay, well then they're there. Would the council like to volunteer to read two recommendations?
Yeah, that staff meet with representatives of the Tla-o-qui-aht First Nation to discuss the sponsored crowdfunding application for District of 117 prior to submission to the province.
Second by Councillor Thomas. Any further questions? All in favor? Here.
That the District of Tofino applied for a sponsored crown grant to accommodate the wastewater treatment plant, related conveyance infrastructure, and a fire training facility on District Lot 117.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. And that the remainder lands be maintained for watershed purposes in accordance with the existing conditional crown grant.
Second by Councillor Thomas. Any further comments? All in favor?
Opposed, motion carried.
And finally, that the district lot 117 Crown Grant application project be referred to the 2026 to 2030 financial planning process.
Councillor Thomas, all in favor? Opposed, motion carried. Great. Source control regulation bylaw number 1350. Mr. Kirkland.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Today I'll be providing a presentation on the third reading of the source control regulation bylaw. Next slide. Please. I'll provide a background to the presentation, speak about the waste discharge permit application process, review the proposed fine schedule, and discuss next steps in the bylaw development. Thank you. In late May 2025, the second reading of the source control regulation bylaw occurred. Following its second reading, staff have now developed a waste discharge permit application document and updated the municipal ticket information system bylaw for first, second, and third reading this evening. This includes required amendment to the notice enforcement and dispute adjudication bylaw, which will be brought to council at the November 4th council meeting for the first, second, and third reading. The waste discharge permit application will provide staff with the necessary framework to evaluate applicants prior to issuing a permit. Its contents will allow staff to review specific liquid waste discharge characteristics by a proposed applicant, and provides the applicant with a means of defining how their liquid waste will be classified prior to submitting the application. Staff, to develop the application document, staff reviewed other municipalities and regional districts bylaws and documents in the development of the application. Waste discharge permit would be required for any restricted or prohibited waste discharge into the district's sanitary sewer infrastructure. The application will be made available on the district's website and at both the municipal and public works office prior to adoption of the bylaw. The waste discharge permit application will not form a part of the bylaw itself, as it may require changes from time to time at the operational level. Application updates, if there are any updates to this document that require changes or amendment to the bylaw, that would be addressed at that time. Next slide. The fine schedule of the source control regulation bylaw was derived by reviewing pertinent sections within the draft bylaw and tabulating and developing associated fines and schedule for contraventions to various requirements that are set forth in the bylaw. When assigning values to each offense, staff did make note of maximum fines and that are identified in the Local Government Act, as well as comparing fines and offenses in other municipalities that also have source control regulation bylaws. As mentioned in the background section, in order to incorporate fines of this bylaw, staff have drafted a municipal ticket information system bylaw amendment for first, second, and third reading this evening. However, to effectively enforce the fees associated with the municipal ticket bylaw, an amendment to the notice enforcement and dispute adjudication bylaw is needed and will be, as I mentioned earlier, brought to council at the next council meeting. So next steps, essentially the final steps in development of the source control regulation bylaw will be amending these two adjacent bylaws and adopting the source control regulation bylaw. Staff anticipate that the source control regulation bylaw and the other associated bylaws will be brought to council's agenda for adoption on November 18th, which is somewhat of a correction to what was the report. And with that, I'll leave the recommendations free.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Kirkland. From council.
Just a quick one, in the fine schedule, I didn't see in there, the fine amounts, are those daily amounts? It's not listed as a daily, or is that a one-time fine?
It would be per occurrence.
per occurrence. So if the discharge was continual, over a 5-10 day period, that would be, each one of those would be.
Yeah, I may, if I may, through the chair, have to take that link back. Could,
Yeah, because a discharge of prohibited waste into a sanitary sewer, $1,000 fine, you know, seems pretty low unless it was a daily fine if the discharge continues. Thank you.
No, through the chair, that's a good question. I'll make a note of that.
That was my only other question as well. And
And I had kind of a follow-up question. It's kind of related to that actually, is how would the district? Actually, you know what? I'll let you come back with the answer. And okay, let's go then. Any other questions, comments? Now, there's just a question for you, Mr. Kirkland, is if there's a change between third reading and adoption, based on that, a little clarification for that, this is fine to go for third reading or no?
Through the chair, my suggestion would be to go to the second reading and then the adjustment could be made between the second and third, but I may defer to Ms. Satina here.
Sure, with the assumption that that's only in the fees bylaw and not going to impact the source control bylaw. We do have one meeting where we could even just bring back the bylaw with the information that council would like. But the next meeting we can do the introduction first readings of the MTI bylaw and just give the third reading of the source control bylaw.
Okay, that's good. Okay. That makes sense. Thank you. So we have one recommendation.
We move that and
Actually 1.5. We can change that to just sorry, let me clarify that. Actually, go ahead, Councilor Anderson, do the first one. Yeah.
move that the District of Tofino source control bylaw number 1315 or be read third time.
By Councilor Thomas, all in favor? Now this one, we can read it a first and second time. Is that what we're saying? And then wait for third, or just defer it and we don't have to do anything?
I don't think I would recommend doing anything this evening because you'll have two bylaws that will be fixed for first three readings at the next week.
okay,
That's good. I'm going to thank you, Mr. Kirkland, and we're going to call a point of privilege now. Just give a 5-minute break. Back.
Thanks. So in this presentation, I'll be providing an overview to the asset management policy amendment report. This presentation will provide a background to the report, discuss the policy amendments being proposed, and identify some next steps in the AM program. So I wanted to mention just a brief high-level timeline of asset management in BC, or sorry, in the District of Tofino, just as I was working on this amendment, kind of researching some of the older files in the district archives. So in 2008, foundations of a formal asset management program got underway. And interesting enough, that also coincided with the implementation of the Asset Management BC organization, which was, I think, probably pretty monumental in opening up avenues for funding of asset management initiatives from senior government to local governments. In the subsequent years, council implemented a capital and infrastructure levy and also adopted an asset management policy in 2014. 2022 saw 2 asset management positions created, an asset management coordinator permanent role and a termed position of asset management technician. The technician role concluded in the summer of this year. And these roles were key in quantifying district-owned assets, assessing condition, replacement values, and remaining service life of the various assets that the district owns. This work has led staff into development of the district's asset management strategy, which was verbally discussed with council in September 2025 at the committee of the whole meeting. A component of the strategy includes amending the 2014 asset management policy that we here today. Staff are proposing to amend the existing asset management policy with new framework, which would include purpose, scope, definitions, policy, and reference procedures for asset management practices within the district. This amendment is included in council's package as a black line document to the 2014 policy. The valuation of district assets has grown significantly since the policy was originally adopted, growing to almost $120 million in tangible capital assets as of 2024 from approximately 24 million in the 2014 adopted policy. This growth in tangible capital assets is attributed to many significant capital infrastructure investments and acquisitions made by the district over the past 10 plus years, including the wastewater treatment plant, renewals, excuse me, to the Village Green Courts and Skate Park, water main upgrades, a new reservoir up on Bars Mountain, and multiple upgrades year over year to the multi-use pathway. The amended policy also identifies specific category asset management plans to provide transparent information to the public, council, and staff on what categories the district is responsible for. And finally, for consistency, there are requirements in the amended policy to ensure regular amendments occur to keep the district's asset management practices current with relevant standards and practices. So next steps, upon adoption of the amended AM policy, staff will continue to work on the asset management strategy, targeting to bring that back later this year or early next year, and further develop the category specific asset management plans moving into 2026. And with that, I'll leave the recommendation.
Thank you very much. Love to ask management. That's such a great idea. Put in practice can be great. Questions for council, from council? Seeing none, comments from council? Seeing none, we have a volunteer to read the
I will
recommendation.
move that the District of Tofino Asset Management Policy adopted September 30, 2014 be amended as shown in Appendix 2 to the staff report titled Asset Management Policy Amendment dated October 21, 2025.
Second by Councillor Thomas. Any further comments? All in favor? None opposed, motion carried.
Thank you.
Next up, Mr. Welsh. And we have before us building bylaw housekeeping amendment.
Promise this one will be quite short. Thank you, council. This is the housekeeping amendment for us to our building bylaw. This bylaw helps us to manage construction, and what's before you today is specifically related to fees. So in 21, staff introduced the last major amendment to this bylaw that essentially implemented step 2 of the BC Energy Step Code. We're now on step 3, so this was a while ago. There was a clerical error at that time within Schedule A. Essentially, one column was missing, and so the fees associated with each item were actually incorrect. However, the agenda package for adoption at this time didn't include Schedule A, so we've actually never adopted that schedule. It took us a while to figure this out. It's rather convoluted, but it's rather straightforward what's before us tonight. Next slide. Oh, yeah, there we go. So although the fee schedule that was posted online was incorrect and had been since 21, staff were always charging the correct fees based on a locally stored document. That's what they referenced. We double checked, triple checked. The public's not been impacted by these errors. The bylaw essentially replaces Schedule A, Part A of Schedule A. Part B and Part C will be unchanged. And we also checked with counsel, legal counsel, to reassure that there's no legal exposure based on this clerical error, and we should not expect any need to refund any applicants of any fees. Schedule A, as we'd like to see it, is encloses Appendix 1 in this meeting's agenda package. With that, that's it.
Excellent. Councillor McMaster, want to read this recommendation?
It doesn't have that. I move that District of Tofino Building Amendment Bylaw number 1256.04/2025 be introduced and read a first, second, and third time.
Second by Councillor Steer. Any further comments? All in favor? None opposed, motion is carried. Excellent. Okay, we got no unfinished business or bylaws business initiated by council members. Councillor Steer.
Yes, thank you through the chair. Just a quick Wiccan Community School Society. We had our AGM and a board meeting concurrent. So just a quick summary. We are looking for new directors to the board. We had a couple resignations. Bobby Lax was on, and now he works for the district here. And then a couple of other teachers that are now down in Ucluelet that were on the board. So we are reaching out if anybody's interested, and if they have the general public is interested, they can contact me directly. And then a couple of other notes that came up in the board meeting. So the Community School Society received a CBT grant for students with diverse needs. So there's another job opening for that. It's an after-school support worker. And it's Monday to Friday from 3 to 5. It's $36.54 an hour. And we're reaching out into the community specifically. It's posted in a number of places. So far, my understanding is as of today, there's no one that has taken that up. So if anyone is interested, there's also potentially concurrently to be able to, there's another position that has just become available, program assistant, working under Caleb there. It's a part-time position. So there might be a possibility to combine those two positions to make it a more financially possibility for somebody to be able to take on that role. So anyways, once again, there is a position there. And then just finally, so fall, of course, school started up, and the Community School Society has 11 programs that are offered this fall, everything from skateboarding to jewelry making. And then just one addition from this year for those on Fridays, there's the family drop-in. It's the pre-K, so the little ones, that's after school on Friday. And That's it.
Just clarify, Councillor Steer, that after-school support worker is only 2 hours?
Yeah, so it coincides with the so there's a few students that have some diverse needs, and it was able to allow them to be able to access the after-school programming through the Community School Society. So it is only a 2-hour position because it's only directed for those after-school programs through the Community School Society. So yeah, we're hoping to, with that program assistant, potentially the gentleman is the family's moving to Ontario, not children. So that there may be a possibility to make it a little more, as a financially viable position. Find a few more hours of that program assistant.
Super. Yeah, 2 hours is hard to tell.
It's a hard sell. Yeah, we're right with that.
Any other business initiated by council members? Seeing none. All right. Question period. Ms. Larson. Open call.
There is a member of the public in attendance online via Zoom. So I will just say now that if you're either attending virtually via Zoom or you're in the public gallery in person, I'm going to make the public call now for question period. If you're using Zoom, you just enter your name in the Q&A function and we'll call on you when it's your turn. So calling once, calling twice, calling 3 times, no questions at this time.
Okay, and we're going to move into the closed session. So I'll move chair that the meeting be closed to the public pursuant to sections 91 ACIK and 92 B of the community charter to discuss matters related to information about identifiable proposers being considered for the position as an officer, employer, agent of the municipality, or another position appointed by the municipality, labor relations, or other employee relations to receive advice that is subject to solicitor client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, negotiations and related discussions respecting the proposed provision of a municipal service that are at their preliminary stages, and that in the view of the council could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality if they were held in public. The consideration of information received and held in confidence relating to negotiations between the municipality, the provincial government, the federal government, both, or between the provincial government and the federal government, or both, and the third party. Seconded by Councillor Steer, all in favor? None opposed, motion carried. So we're just going to spend a couple seconds to move into the vote. I actually have my chance to go out and break, so. Right.